All right. Hello and welcome to our online meetup about the trends and challenges in QA. Well, unfortunately, we cannot meet in person, but on the other hand, with this setup, we don't have to limit ourselves only to speakers and attendees in Prague. So I believe that both our speakers and our attendees are pretty international, which is great to see. So there is something positive about it. My name is Jan. I'm the community manager at Mews, and I'll be your host today. So today you will hear 4 lightning talks on various QA related topics. 2 of them by my colleagues, Renat and Timothy, 1 by Ivan from Wrike, and 1 from Ulad from Bumble. I'm not going to bore you too much with long intro, but I want to tell you a couple of information. So this event is being recorded, so if you miss anything, don't worry. We'll send it to you shortly after today. You all are muted, but it doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from you. You can submit your questions into Slido, hashtag QA Meetup, or you can put them into the QA feature here and we'll copy them in the Slido. So after every of the presentation, we'll host a short questions and answers session. You can scan, if you want, this QR code to get the Slido, and that's it from me. And I'm gonna hand it over to Renat. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jan. Just give me a second to get it running. I think you should stop sharing, Jan, before I can actually, yeah. Okay. Now, everyone can see the screen?
Yes, but we cannot see you. Show us yourself.
Oh, I thought I could get away with it, but
nope.
All right, give me a second. Actually, I need to stop sharing. There you go. Can you see me now?
Yes,
clearly.
Great.
Excuse my messy hair, and that's kind of my Corona haircut, and my hair is just unruly, so it is what it is. Right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's meetup. It's lovely to see so many people here. Actually, I did not expect this kind of interest, so I'm positively surprised. And I've been told that it's in large part thanks to our Balkan friends who shared this event and joined in numbers here. And since I've had the pleasure to meet a lot of people from that region, and we actually have a team member who's from that area, I'd like to say to you, Dobro večer I dobrodošli. My name is Renat Kulalov. I'm head of QA at Mews. And today I'm going to try to give an answer to the question that I've heard being asked like during all the course of my career. It's been asked many times, and it's obviously the question that all you can see on the screen is, should QA fix bugs? When it comes to technical QAs, I feel like this is a touching point between developers and QA, where sometimes the question is asked, like, instead of submit it, you could have fixed it yourself. You have the skills. And today I'm kind of will try to lead you to the answer I believe is more or less correct. Now, time is a very strict limitation today, so without further ado, let's crack on. Now, I've just said that I've been asked this question many times during my career. For once, for a change, if I may say so, I'd like to ask you, do you think QA should fix bugs? What is your opinion on this topic? Now, there's going to be a poll, I believe right now, Jan, if you can, where you can provide your answer. But for now, some of you may realize or recognize who this is. This is a Totoro. He's our team mascot, by the way. And he is going to provide some of the answers that are more often than not are am I showing the pop-up dialog as well on the presentation?
No, I just see Totoro with what he
Okay,
thinks.
because it covered the screen and I thought you're bothered by it. Sorry. So Totoro here, as I was saying, is going to provide us with some of the answers that are more often than not given to this. And you can see that some of them are quite dismissive of the idea. And it's kind of understandable. Division of the responsibilities is very important when it comes to companies or organization in the companies. But I personally believe that there is no clear answer to that. Like your mileage may vary depending on the company you work for, or it may not work for your company, it may work for others. Fortunately, here in Mews, initiatives like this are supported. So we had a crack at it. We try to implement it as the best way we can. And on the next slide, I'll try to show you or explain you what was our idea or how we try to implement it in a nutshell. There's obviously not much time to explain it in detail. Now, on this lovely drawing, you can see that I have drawn here like backlog of bugs, let's say, for some reason or the other, have not been fixed yet. Now, on the next picture here, you can see there's an overly simplified workload that a QA engineer might have. So there's testing new features and writing or maintaining automated tests, about 50-50 separation. That's overly simplified. I'm just for the purpose of explanation in a nutshell. Now, in case QA would like to fix some bugs, he would go through this backlog and pick some of those that are, let's say, easy to fix or low impact ones where there's certainty that fixing this bug will not break something else. There's obviously no, like you will not have 100% certainty, but you can have a pretty much good idea. Now, once those issues are picked, it kind of creates a subpool of issues that could be fixed by QA. And I want to kind of stress a little bit that priority on fixing bugs is still on developers. For QA, it's as you can see on this drawing now, it's an optional activity and it comes kind of on top of the responsibility. Like it's not even, maybe it's not the right way to say it's on top. It's something that they can do optional if they choose so. They can do it and they can opt out of it if they want to. Now, this is more or less in a nutshell. I know this is like fast and very simplified way how it happens. There's a lot more that happens behind the scenes, but I just wanted to give you an idea. And some of you might be thinking now, like I've just asked you a question. I've asked you to fill the poll. And on the next slide, I straight up tell you, we already do this. You might be thinking like, of course, he already gave us the answer. Or actually the poll results came out. I will adjust them now. So it's 69 by 31 to no. And only 14% actually fix bugs now, those who work as a QA engineer. That's kind of the results that I've expected. This is more or less understandable, and this is, I believe, correct representation of how it should be. But yeah, returning to my talk. So I've told you that we do this. I told you we had a crack at it. We tried to implement it. And some of you might be wondering, like, why am I even asking the question? Because I clearly shown you that we already do it. So if we do it, therefore the answer is yes. Well, not quite. But before I talk about the answer to this that I believe is correct, I'd like to address some more issues that eventually or inevitably may arise when talking about this topic. And that's going to be on this slide. So 3 main questions that always come up when talking about this topic is, how do you ensure there's the right knowledge? Because obviously you cannot just let anyone fix bugs, because we all understand that it will bring more problems than benefits. Now, or how do we provide them with time? I just said that it's an optional activity, and their other responsibilities take up 100% of their time. And obviously the third one is, why would they even want to do this? What's the motivation? Now, I've put on some topics here that I will quickly address. As to the question of having the right knowledge to do something like this is, for those who are not aware, I've put the Kulalov here. It's an online training platform for IT professionals, and it's an amazing way to expand your knowledge, to learn more stuff. The other thing here is Code and Tell. It's kind of our internal name for it, but I couldn't come up with a better one. I kind of lack imagination, so I just put it there. It's essentially something like a pair programming, but with more accent on learning. So you can kind of like book an hour with the developer and either learn and see what they're doing, or if you have coding skills, you can practice your skills under their watchful eye, and fix a bug or two or introduce small functionality. That really minimalizes the possibility of someone breaking something with the fix. Even though they try to help, they might cause more damage. So this is to minimize this kind of wrong impact. Now, providing the time to fix bugs, obviously I said it's an optional activity, it's not part of their responsibilities. So there's this thing that a lot of companies now I hear do, a lot of modern companies, it's a side project day, where you can spend the day, depending on the company or how they implement it, you can spend the day doing something that is beneficial to your company besides your direct responsibilities. So for us, it would be, fixing a bug or two. And when we talk about the motivation, obviously, if you do understand how the system works behind the curtains, what's the development process like, then it will make you a better professional. You will submit better bug reports. You will understand the problem deeper than just saying this doesn't work. So this is, for me, the main motivation. Second one, now this is not a secret to anyone. A lot of people join QA as an entry to IT. Some of them want to become developers. Some of them just want to learn more about IT, and then they fall in love with it and continue on the journey. But like some of the career paths, and we have that in place as well, could lead you to becoming a developer. So getting few fixes and experience in coding within your own company under your belt could be a great base for you to potentially make a switch in the future. Now, you can see I've kind of talked to you about how it works here in Mews and how we address certain points and problems. Now, we addressed most of the problems that we have or we had before. So now is probably the time to try to provide you with my answer that I believe is correct. But just before, I'd like to sum up everything. So at the start, I've posed the question to you and to myself. What do you think about the topic? What do you think if QA should fix bugs or not? The second one, on the second slide, I showed you how it works, how we've tried to implement it. And I've addressed some challenges that inevitably arise when you try to do something like this. Now, all this information taken into account, the answer to the question, should QA fix bugs, is the answer that I believe in, and I believe comes closest to the truth, is that they shouldn't. They shouldn't have it as their responsibility. QA should not have fixing bugs as part of their responsibilities, nor as the thing they're pushed to do. However, if the person has the right knowledge and willingness to do it, and time, then why not? Why not allow it? Why not support it? Because in the end, we all have a main goal of achieving great product and grow as professionals and learn new skills. Then I believe doing something like this contributes to all these points. Now, as I've seen during the poll, a lot of you may have different opinion, and I would love to discuss them. So there is a Slido. Don't forget about the Slido, and there's questions you can ask within the Zoom itself. So don't forget to leave your question. We will discuss it definitely right now after the presentation. And yeah, just before we jump onto questions, I'd like to say thank you Thank you so much for joining. There's so much more people than I expected, and I'm kind of positively overwhelmed. If you want to connect with me after this presentation, if you still like me, then, or if you have a positive idea about me, then here's my LinkedIn link, and you can write me an email. I'd love to connect with more professionals around the world. And yeah, that's been my talk. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Renat. There's a virtual clap going on, of course.
Oh,
you can write him even if you don't have positive thoughts about Renat, but I don't think there is anyone like that.
Oh yeah, no, I'm all for constructive. I love it.
So we actually have a couple of questions, so let's go over to them.
Yeah, I've stopped presenting, so I think you can take over now. 45 people.
So
let's do.
First question: how would a QA prioritize bugs with other things going on?
That's the kind of a point I was trying to make. There should be no priority. It should be an initiative they are willing to do themselves. Like, it's never pushed on them. It's never like given to them as a priority. It's something that they would, if they want to use, like that's this side project day, or they want to try. Let's say they learn new skills. Like, learning is part of the work, as I believe. And if they want to try their skills at actual development within their company, they're welcome to do so. And I may have misunderstood this. Maybe they think like they've already picked some bugs and how do they prioritize them, but then it's more or less up to them and the tech lead, I guess. So they can talk it through with tech lead, what bugs should they prioritize in fixing. So I hope I kind of answered this in both possible.
Next question, should the QA test their own bug fix?
No. Same rules apply. Same rules. No one tests their own work, even if you are QA. Same rules apply.
So like kind of a code review for QA?
Yeah, they go through the same code review as any developer would. We have 2 levels of code review, and if you made a bug fix, you will go through the same process, and someone else will look at your fix. They shouldn't do it themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Third question: is it time efficient for QAs to fix the bugs? Same task would take much fewer devs time, this person believes.
It's true in many cases, and I would agree with your point, but to be real, like I've been in this business for a while, and I know a lot of the small bugs just get like forgotten about or prioritized so low that it takes ages for devs to fix them. We all know that's true. So like, you are kind of correct, but reality says there's always room for QA to pick up some bugs and fix them.
And even though I said 3, I think we can go through all of them because those were quick answers. Alexandra asked, do QA engineer also review pull requests?
Some of them. So we have automated tests, and if you do become an automated QA engineer, then yeah, like, you will be part of the review, because there'll be like a 3. So 2 developers would review it from a coding standards point of view, and the automation QA engineer would check the testing process, like how the automated test is structured and so on. So yeah, and there's also, we use Robot Framework as well as C#, and for Robot Framework, it's mostly up to us. So it goes through 2 levels of review as well. And the QA engineers kind of review each other's work.
All right, and do you provide Pluralsight accounts for your employees?
Yes, well, I think we have a tech account, and then some of us have like personal accounts. By the way, since Pluralsight came up, I just want to say, like, our QA department is leading people in using the Pluralsight. It's been amazing. Like, Jan can confirm that, I believe.
Yeah, we have one person who is just out of the leash.
Yeah.
And that's it. But I have one more question from Yolanda, which is in the QA. So could you please tell us more about the bug logs? The sound was interrupted sometimes during the presentation. Is the list of the bugs in the dashboard with current status open, fixed, ready for regression testing? Is it correct?
Could you please tell more about? Yeah, something like this. So you'd have a list of bags. Like we have a dashboard for this to kind of overview the bags, and you can clearly see some of them like listed there with the statuses, like who's assigned to them, what kind of priority they have. So yeah, this is more like this. It's not like we have dashboards for monitoring the number of bugs and when they are being reported and so on, but there's also like a list as a classical backlog where you can immediately see who is assigned to this, what kind of priority is this. There are certain workflows depending on the severity of the bug, but it's kind of a like discussion that should happen at a different time, I guess.
Cool. Thank you, Renat. This is it. Your time is up. And now it's Timothy coming to the stage.
Good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Renat. 1 second while I share my screen here. This is good. Boop, 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 boop. Yes. Great. So you can all see my screen. You can see my screen, right? Right? I assume.
Yes.
So hope so. Great. So 1 second while I set up some other things here. All right, great. So thanks again, Renat, and thank you everybody for being here, and good evening, and welcome to my very first online presentation in the history of ever, getting the most from the AAA pattern. Now, my name is Timothy Eason. I am the QA automation engineer at Mews, and I have been for the past year, or just under 1 year. Next month is actually my 1 year anniversary, so happy early anniversary to myself. And we're short on time, so let's get this show on the road. So in order for us to get the most out of the AAA pattern, we should first really understand what the AAA pattern is, and what is the AAA pattern. Well, unfortunately for the uninitiated, a simple Google search won't be of much help. The top result is the largest car dealership in the Czech Republic. And as if that wasn't already unhelpful enough, an image search confuses everything even more, bringing up results of auto insurance companies, auto companies, and strangely enough, Japanese pop bands. Now, this is very useless to us in the software industry. So perhaps we should rephrase this question. Instead of asking what is AAA, instead, what is AAA in software testing? So AAA in software testing, in a nutshell, is just a pattern for structuring tests. Its goal is to make your tests more readable and understandable, so that when you come back to the test after, say, a day, a week, a month, or a year, you have a better idea of what that test is doing. It achieves this goal by separating a test into 3 distinct parts. And the first part is the arrange step, where you set up the input values for your test. This is followed up by the act step, where you evaluate the function or the unit that is being tested. This is usually a single line of code where you just call the function that you want to test. And then finally, you have the assert step, where you verify that the output of the function is what you expected it to be. So altogether, these make up the arrange, act, assert pattern. Together, they're AAA or AAA. So now that we have a better understanding of what AAA is, well, what does it look like? So here I've created a very simple test in C# that checks that I can extract gold from a rock. It uses the most simple version of the AAA test by separating each step with a comment that precedes it. So you can see here that in my act step, I am testing the function extract gold. And then in my arrange step, I set up my inputs. So I have gold X, because obviously I need a gold X to be mining gold. I give that gold X to the miner, and then the miner digs to get the rock. And then finally, at the end, I check to make sure that I do in fact have gold. Now I do want to be, excuse me, I do want to be crystal clear here that when I say minor, I mean this kind of a minor and not this kind of a minor. I am not advocating for exploiting children here. And another thing, I do not want to show you C# test this entire time, because that will just put me to sleep and put you to sleep. So instead, I converted this test into something a little bit more readable, a little bit more digestible, this diagram here. So here I have the exact same test where I create the gold X, create the minor, get rock, extract gold, check is gold. So this test is nice. It works, the flow is there. I have all of my inputs, I have my function, and I have my check. But what if I have another function that instead of checking for gold, it checks for silver? So already the setup is very much similar. And in fact, I'm repeating some of the same steps, such as this create minor and get rock. Also, this check is gold and check is silver function is a little bit suspicious, and maybe we can do a bit of refactoring there. But let's now focus on the more obvious repetition, that create minor and get rock. So really in your tests and in your programs in general, you want to avoid duplication. And one way to avoid duplication is by taking the duplicated parts and putting them into functions. So we can do that here like this. So here I've created this get rock with axe function, and its only purpose is to create a minor and get a rock. So then the flow of the applet, then I use this function to put it inside of my test, and then the flow of the test is really the exact same. And to show you what I mean, then here is the C# example again, using this get rock with axe function. It takes both a gold axe or a silver axe and returns a rock. So already here we've removed the duplication, looks good. Also, I have refactored this check function just to make it a little bit more clear, so that when you read the function name, you know exactly what the function should be doing, or have a better idea as to what its purpose is. So altogether, this is good. You've removed the duplication, you've clarified your functions so that your test is much more readable, more understandable. This is great. So you succeeded, good job. You give yourself a pat on the back, go get yourself a cup of coffee, and then go ask your boss for a raise. But wait, I say, there is more. There's still a little bit of refactoring in this test that we can do and that we probably should get rid of, such as this get rock with X. This is repeated in both of the tests. Also, this assert object has type is still a little bit suspicious and could probably be refactored even further. Now, what you should be doing when you write your tests is you should be able to just use the very minimum essentials and then let your test handle all of the secondary information. And what I mean by this is I would prefer it if you could create a function that's simple like this, where I could just create my gold axe, I extract the gold, and then I check is gold. So then behind the scenes somewhere, this create minor and get rock is happening, but I don't have to actually set it up inside of my test. And now is something like this possible? Yes, it is. We saw in the previous example that I can remove duplication by taking that duplication and putting it into a function, and then putting that function into my test. But what if I reverse that order? What if instead I create a function and then put only the essential inputs into the function that I've created? Well, this is possible if we do something like this. So here I've created an extraction test that has 3 inputs: my arrange input, my act input, and my assert input. So the arrange input is simple. All it's taking is an axe, in this case, a gold axe. My act input, however, is going to be using a function. So my extract gold is a function. Luckily for us, most modern programming languages allow us to use functions as inputs. So this is great for us. We can use this extract gold as a function in our act input, or sorry, we can use this extract gold function as an input. And then this also means that we can use the check gold function as an input as well. Then what happens behind the scenes is when we call this extraction test, well, it takes the arrange input, and then behind the scenes, where we don't have to think about it anymore, it creates a miner, gets the rock, and then passes the rock to that act input, which is the extract gold function. And then finally, the extract gold function returns a gold, and then it is asserted inside of my check gold function. So already we see that we can, remove ourselves from having to set up everything inside of our tests to just focusing on creating the necessary inputs that are going to be used by our test, and then all the secondary inputs are handled by a separate function. Makes sense, right? Now, it is a little bit confusing, and I know from experience that using functions as types is very confusing at first, but once you have the practice and once you try it out a few times and get to understand it, it really, really begins to show you how beneficial using functions as inputs becomes. And what happens with all the benefits is that you are able to create some test that looks like this. Now here we have the same exact two tests that I've been showing you, the gold and silver test, but instead we're using this extraction test that I just showed you in the previous slide. And what's happening is that I create my arrange input here, the gold, and then that behind the scenes gets thrown into the function, and then it creates the miner, gets the rock, and then it returns the rock to my act input. And then my act input, then I can call the extract gold function. And then finally, I assert that that object is gold. And notice here that I have two different functions now. I have assert object is gold and assert object is silver. So again, I've removed duplication. And in this test, I've really removed all the duplication that there is. So now when I'm writing the test, I can focus only on what's important to the test. And then somewhere else where I don't have to think about it, all the other stuff, all the other inputs, the secondary inputs are being evaluated and created for me. So these are some of the benefits, but to really summarize more of the benefits of using the AAA pattern in this way, well, firstly and foremost, your tests become much more minimalistic. That is, you can focus on just what is important to the test and not on setting everything up every single time. Also, by being more minimalistic, they become easier to read and to understand. And by being easier to read and understand, they're more maintainable. And then functions, using functions, by their very nature, functions are reusable. So they follow that dry principle, that don't repeat yourself principle. So already you're removing a lot of the duplication, you're not repeating yourself, you're following this principle. And finally, functions are self-documenting. And what I mean by this is that if you write functions well, and you name them well, then it's clear just by reading them what that function's intended purpose is. However, if you have a function just called do stuff, well, that doesn't help anybody understand what is actually happening. So it's worth it to take the time to actually focus on naming your functions. That way, when you look at it the first time, you know exactly what it's doing. So altogether, these are just some of the benefits of using the AAA pattern in this way. If anything, I hope that this has inspired you to try to implement some of the examples I've shown you here in your own tests, and to make your AAA test as minimalistic and dry as possible. Of course, if you have any questions, I will stick around for the next few minutes to help clear up any issues, comments, concerns, et cetera, that you might have. Just remember that if you do ask questions about Japanese pop bands or auto insurance companies, I won't have any answers for you. Thank you very much. And if you do implement these on your own and you ever get stuck or lost, or you just want to reach out and say hi, feel free to email me. My email is timothy.eason@mews.com. Thanks again.
All right, thank you, Timothy. And I'm happy that you celebrated your anniversary with giving your first talk.
Thanks.
All right, so would you like some questions?
Of course, bring it on.
Let's do it. You've got 4 of them. So first one, Why have you decided to use robot framework for your test automation? Are you satisfied with the decision?
I think that's not the question to Timothy.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
Renat, you
don't
can
know
pick up.
Do you want me to, or do you want to say something, Timmy?
Well, you're the one who decided to use robot framework, so it's probably better
Okay, fair
coming
enough.
from you.
So normally, yeah. So we use C# and Koipu and Selenium, but robot framework started as a learning tool to learn automation. So we try to build our team from the ground up. So we try to, well, not try, but we do hire more junior people and then kind of raise their knowledge and bring them up to becoming automation QA engineers. And the robot framework is an amazing tool to start your automation journey. So that was kind of the reason for this, yeah.
So what are the other patterns except for the AAA? Are there any competitors, or the only alternative is a mess in the tests?
As far as I know, there are no alternatives. I think most people actually structure their tests in a way that's very similar to this. But what the AAA pattern is intended to do is make you think about structuring your tests. So yes, they can be messy if you don't use the AAA test, but they can, if you're a good programmer and you actually think out the way that you're writing the test, then it's likely that you're already using the AAA pattern. Just somebody decided, hey, let's name this something, and they got away with it. So as far as I know, there are no competitors to the AAA test.
Right. Is AAA pattern the same thing as page object pattern?
Oh, I do not know what the page object pattern is. I've never heard of this. So I am actually not sure. Renat, do you know what the page object pattern is?
Yes, of course. Yeah. It's kind of it used to be a holy grail, I guess, during the automation. It still is to a certain point, but no, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's not even like remotely, I guess. Like page object pattern is mostly to track your objects basically, and AAA for us to structure your tests to make them resilient and readable, and basically, yeah. Should I don't think I should start my video. I'm just popping in to ask the questions, but yeah, but it's not the same thing, to give the answer in short.
Right. Python has PyTest and unit test frameworks which use a pattern. Does C# have similar tools?
It does. It does have similar tools, but for example, we use NUnit at Mews. It does not automatically create the AAA for you, though. There are a couple of different testing frameworks, but the ones that I usually have to set that up yourself.
Right, and I'm not sure if we're gonna know this one, but maybe let's see. What to be installed additional to get AAA in IntelliJ Java IDE?
If it's anything similar to the way we have done it in C#, then really you kind of have to set it up yourself. So usually what we do is you create in the examples that I showed you, we create a test fixture that handles that sort of execution test example, and then every single class, every single test class then inherits from that test fixture. So then you can use the AAA test that we created in all of your test classes. So I think that is how you would have to set it up in IntelliJ as well.
All right, we'll get to the two questions at the end if we still have time. So Timothy, thank you very much. And now we're leaving the world of Mews and we're going over to Wrike and Ivan.
Yeah, give me a second. I will share my screen. Yeah, that's it. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think so. Hi, everyone. My name is Ivan, and I'm really happy to be here. And today I want to tell you about IntelliJ IDEA plugins in QA automation. And I really hope that it will be useful and interesting for you. A few words about me. Again, my name is Ivan Varivoda, and I have been working in QA automation more than 4 years. And last 3 years, I have been working for Wrike, where I develop and improve our QA automation framework. And also I like skiing and riding a motorbike. And in the bottom right corner, you can see my contacts. So feel free to ask me about this presentation. And a few words about Wrike. Wrike, this is an international company which develops SaaS solution for project management. We have 10 offices globally. 2 of them are engineering offices, and they are located in St. Petersburg and in Prague. And also we have more than 1,000 employees. More than 20,000 organizations from different countries use Wrike. Wrike helps them be more productive. And what does Wrike look like? Wrike consists of a lot of views. For example, here you can see task view. It presents information about task, for example, task title, task description, assignees, and etc., etc. Also, you can select the necessary status from workflow. Also, we have workload, where you can check the workload of your colleague, or we have proofing tool, and we can review any images or videos. And we have more views like reports, timeline. And as you can see, Wrike is a big and complex application, and we have to test it carefully. So that is why we have more than 24,000 Selenium tests. 500,000 tests are run daily in our infrastructure. Our test framework has more than 1 million lines of code, and we can run all our tests in 1.5 hours. And it allows us to deploy our product every day at least once. And for test writing, we use Maven, Java, JUnit 5, and as you guess, IntelliJ IDEA. As you can see, we have a lot of tests, a lot of code. And how is it possible to run our tests in 1.5 hours? It is possible because we like continuous improvements, like migration to new cool test framework like JUnit 5 or another instruments. We also like making huge refactorings or integrate our test framework with another internal tools. And when I'm talking about huge refactoring, I think you understand that we can't do it manually because we have a lot of tests. And we have to find effective way to solve this problem. And for huge refactorings, we use IntelliJ IDEA plugins. And right now, I want to tell you a little about plugins. So IntelliJ IDEA plugin, this is a good way to expand functionality of IntelliJ IDEA. For example, there are a lot of great plugins like Lombok, .ignore, bash support. And one of the main reasons why we chose IntelliJ for test refactoring, this is speed of refactoring. If you use IntelliJ, I think you are familiar with this picture. Here we can see how IntelliJ is scanning files to index. And have you ever thought why refactoring from IntelliJ IDEA is so fast? It's so fast because it uses indexes for any code changes. And in my opinion, it works really fast, really fast. And there is another good news that IntelliJ IDEA plugins allow us to use PSI. PSI, this is a program structure interface. This is internal mechanism of IntelliJ IDEA for code changing and refactoring. For example, when you rename your method, IntelliJ uses this interface. Let's look at this code fragment. This code is from our test framework. And for common text editor, this is just a code. But when we are talking about PSI, here plenty of PSI elements. For example, PSI annotation, standard Selenium extensions. Or we have here PSI fields like write client or folder. And we have PSI method, prepare method. And of course, we have PSI expression. This is line of code, which is located inside the method. For example, here, check sorting menu items execution. And PSI elements allow us to make, to do some refactoring with these elements. And let's look at PSI annotation in details. Here I put common actions with PSI annotation. For example, you can create your own annotation from string in IntelliJ IDEA, or you can remove your annotation from your code or change the value inside your annotation. And frankly speaking, there are more actions, but I put here really common ones. And let's look at example when we can use IntelliJ IDEA for code refactoring. Imagine that you use JUnit 4 test framework for test writing. This framework has ORG JUnit test annotation and also category annotation for test for marking up your tests with value with .class ending. And when we are talking about JUnit 5 test framework, the test annotation has different package here, or JUnit Jupyter API package. And there is another annotation for marking up your tests with string value. So if you want to migrate to JUnit 5, you have to do two things. Firstly, you have to replace ORG JUnit test annotation with ORG JUnit Jupyter API test annotation. And the second one, you have to replace category with tag annotation. You can notice that first step you can do by mass replacing in IntelliJ IDEA. This is true, but here I put really simple actions. And frankly speaking, there are more rules for migration to JUnit 5. This is just example. So let's look at the code. Here I put the code for migration to JUnit 5. Here you can see passes to annotation from these frameworks. And in this main method, we firstly replace test annotation. After that, we replace category annotation with tag one. And after that, we remove redundant import and short reference. So let's look closer into replace category annotation with tag. This is pretty simple method where we firstly find our category annotation and extract string value from this annotation, and then we create tag annotation. And here we write down our action to our editor. And right now I want to show you demo. Wish me luck. So here you can see my IntelliJ, I hope. And here this is code. So I execute run idea goal from Gradle, and idea is starting with installed my plugin. I mean, this IDEA has my plugin, which I developed in this one. So it's opening. Yeah, it's opening. Loading my first IDEA plugin project. And close tips, not now. So let's look at this project. We have IDEA plugin example project, and I want to find test. Open test folder, Java, Wrike example. Yeah, example test. And here you can see that we have usual Java test with JUnit 4 test framework. Here we have already JUnit packages. And I have category annotation with small class. This is empty class for marking up my test. So I right click on this class and execute migrate to JUnit 5 action. And after that, you can see that imports will change it. And right now we have already JUnit repeater API packages for tag and test annotation. And the main thing is that we have value with string. We have string value inside my tag annotation. You can notice that these sections are too easy, but imagine that we have a lot of tests, more than 20,000. So IntelliJ IDEA plugin allows us to click one button. I need to add migrate to JUnit 5 action to this panel and click to this action, and all my project will be migrated to JUnit 5. So let's go back. To remind you that there are more usages for IntelliJ IDEA plugins. You can migrate to new frameworks. You can make huge refactoring or make integration with other systems in your company. Whatever you want, feel free to use this a really powerful instrument for code refactoring. And here I put a few useful links. The first one is about PSI from JetBrains site. You can screen these QR codes and go to the site. And the second one, how to write plugins, is great article from JetBrains site. And here I put my GitHub with this IDEA plugin example. So you can clone this code and test it, how it works. It's really cool. And that's all from me. Thank you for your attention. Here are my contacts, and I'm ready to answer your questions. Stop share. Yeah.
Thank you, Ivan. Maybe I have one question in regards to the question we had originally, because you told that you have a really big code base and you have big QA and development team. So how is it in your team? Do QA people fix bugs?
It is possible, yes. I know a few cases.
Nice. All right, so let's go to questions. There are two for you. So I copied this one from the Q&A by Nela Yalovtsova. Are those tests part of CI, or you run some smaller subset there? Because 1.5 hours runtime seems to be quite a lot.
Yeah, of course, we have markup for tests, and usually we run maybe 8,000 tests at once. So we don't run more than 5,000 or 6,000 tests in our CI.
Mm-hmm. And there's one more for you. I will take the other two for Timothy after the last presentation. So why not test NG, asks Yasmin.
So I have a good question, because this is a really good question, because there are a lot of discussion between testing G or Unit 5, Unit 4. We like Unit 5, and we have a lot of plugins and utils which we use for Unit 5. And honestly, I'm not familiar enough with testing G.
All right, so maybe something for you to take from this talk as well. All right, so thank you, Ivan. Thank you very much for your presentation. And now it's up to Ulad to close things up with his presentation. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll start sharing my screen now. And now you should be able to see my presentation, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Hello, thanks for joining today, and I'd like to present my talk. Why do we do test automation internal mentorships for our QA engineers? My name is Vlad, and I currently work as QA engineer at Bumble in London, United Kingdom. We have two main products, Badoo and Bumble, and our mission is to offer the most equitable, inclusive, and empowering way to connect. And we have users all over the world. Speaking about our mobile applications, testing is performed by different means. Tests on developer side, like unit tests or functional tests, manual testing, and UI end-to-end auto tests. And to facilitate the latter, we have test automation engineers. They work with UI auto tests and the framework. All three teams interact between each other and with the other teams. And this allows us to maintain the fast development and release pace. And a couple of years ago, we started shifting towards using auto tests much more in our development and release processes. This includes both tests on developer side and end-to-end UI auto tests, which back then were the main responsibility of a dedicated test automation team. Why we decided to do that? That actually allowed us to get all the benefits that auto tests usually provide. It's faster feedback, speeding up the testing cycles, and freeing the time for exploratory and non-functional testing. That's where our journey began. And at that stage, end-to-end tests, as I said, were maintained by test automation team. QAs were focused on manual testing of the features. And now let's quickly skim through our history of end-to-end test automation. The next step for us was that QAs were looking out after the auto tests, though still with the help of test automation team. And by that time, auto tests were, and actually they still are, the main means of regression testing for us. The next stage was that auto tests were maintained mainly by QAs, and test automation team works with the test framework. And what's more, the intention was to make one more shift, and namely QAs taking over the framework and some tools related tasks, while the test automation team moves towards research, innovation, and building internal testing tools. And that would be impossible without one more step, and specifically QAs actually learning the framework, learning test inner specifics, and in-depth working with the code base beyond their day-to-day tasks, because regular activities were done on a pretty decent level. But stepping beyond and growing as a specialist seemed not to be easily achievable without help. But the task that actually goes beyond, it cannot be given to a person without any prior knowledge or training. And our decision was to try an internal mentorship in the test automation team for that. And this approach was chosen as the most efficient in terms of time and profit, in comparison, for example, to dedicated mentors for every QA, because it's hardly possible for us. We would need plenty of test automation engineers for that. Now I'll show you how it works, how it worked on my personal example. And the set of activities for trainees during this mentorship is pretty similar. So following me in my mentorship, you'll get to know how it's organized in general. I joined test automation team for one sprint, it's 2 weeks, and had to participate in all activities like stand-ups, estimations, retros, technical kickoffs, along with test automation team. The important part was that I sat together with test automation team. It was before COVID-19 times, but it was important back then because I was focused on test automation tasks, not on the features and manual testing of the features. I was not distracted. And while I was sitting among the team, I got actually a chance to ask questions there directly during the coding. So it was very efficient. These days, of course, it's not possible, but I left it here specifically because for me, it was very important. And of course, I got a challenging test automation project, the one which otherwise I won't be able to do on my own. And senior test automation engineer was assigned as a mentor who helped me to deliver the task. And this person was the main entry point for all queries and for all questions and all discussions related to my task. So if I was stuck, for example, I could ask him without any delay. And as you remember, I had a limited time for all activities, just 1 sprint, 2 weeks. And again, as you remember, we developed more than one of the application on different platforms. For mobile, it's iOS and Android. And also tests were developed over the last couple of years. And because our UI framework is cross-platform, we try to share code across applications and across platforms where possible. It eases the maintenance and support. And we also try to use the common approaches, but sometimes it's tricky, especially if we are dealing with some old code. So my task was related to the unification of some of the methods we use. And the idea was to make it simple and unambiguous for all applications and for both platforms. And it sounded like a good task for internal mentorship because it was quite challenging, it was complex, it was multi-platform, it was multi-applicational, and it involved loads of communication. I worked in iOS QA department where our main responsibility was testing iOS application features. So mainly I've interacted with iOS auto tests. Now I need to touch Android tests as well. And the first and the most important part was to think about the prototype. And this was where the mentor's help was essential. And we had a session of pair designing, which resulted in a concept that we wanted to try. And shortly after the prototype was ready, I started the migration to the new approach. And it's assumed that during the mentorship, you can create a proof of concept. And later, this will transform into a bigger task. And the former trainee would be the owner. And this ownership is a great practice as well. It helps you to try to learn many different things that you would otherwise just miss. And unfortunately, the end of the sprint rapidly approached, and I was able to accomplish only part of the job. So because the sprint ended, it was important to think about finishing this migration, finishing the task, because otherwise it was all in vain. And it involved transferring the knowledge to the person who will carry on with the migration. So we've conducted the intro session and work communication throughout their further work and via code reviews. Also, it was important to share the information about the work that was done with everybody from the QA team so that they can actually use the new approach and benefit from it if possible. So it was done by internal presentation where I've explained the new approach. And since the migration wasn't finished, we still had all the implementations in our code. So it was a bit confusing if you try to follow the new way without any explanation. And also it was essential to monitor the tests if there were any unexpected failures or tests became flakier, so to fix them, because we have a few configurations, quite large test suites, so it's really hard to be 100% sure that nothing had been broken. And also it was, so we've done a retrospective meeting where we've discussed how did the mentorship go, what was fine, what could be improved in the future. And we talked about both good, like did we achieve any extra goals, things, and not so good points for both me as a trainee and the test automation team mentor. So it's important for the mentor to get the feedback as well, because thus the mentorship process could be enhanced in the future and adjusted. Since I was trainee, I'd like to highlight the tasks. I like to highlight the mistakes that I've done. So my first mistake was that I didn't really fully benefit from being among the test automation engineers. I didn't ask a lot, but was more concentrated on the delivery of the task. I tried to do everything on my own to show that I am capable of doing it. and that I meet expectations that I myself imagined. And solution here is don't be afraid to ask and to discuss, and actually fully benefit from being inside among the test automation team. What's more, alas, during the concept discussions and code reviews, I wasn't really able to counter the proposed solutions and edits. This is because I didn't feel confident enough, and realistically, I didn't have enough experience in test automation. Generally, I tended to agree with whatever was suggested by senior test automation engineer mentor. Solution here is to have your own opinion, of course, and probably to prepare for the kickoff sessions more. Otherwise, you won't really learn the new things. You'll just interpret after someone else. Finally, I wasn't accurate enough with my estimates, and I didn't foresee that I wouldn't be able to deliver the task on time, even when it was crystal clear for everybody. It was related to the previous points that I was afraid of not meeting the expectations. And the solution is pretty simple, is to make the correction to the estimates when it's evident that you need more time, and to communicate it clearly to the mentor or to the manager without being afraid of any kind of punishment or maybe blaming. So it's really good that all these points were discussed during the retrospectives and they can be avoided in the future. After some time and based on the experiences from the past internal mentorships, we've come up with a test internship manifesto. It was important so that everybody understands the whole idea behind this internal mentorship thing. So the manifesto is as follows: focus on learning over strict time-bound delivery, interactive discussions over working in silos, early and regular feedback over end of mentorship retro. While there is a value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. And as I said, not always people that participate in internal mentorship, they have taken advantage, like myself, for example, from the mentorship. So, for example, I was too shy to ask the questions because I thought they are not very clever. And actually, I spent time trying to solve the problems by myself without seeking for help. So we are approaching the next point of our journey where QAs work with the framework and test automation team researches, innovates, builds internal testing tools. And we are not 100% there yet, but we are moving towards this goal. And we still continue to have internal mentorships with more and more people participating in them. And the impact is already visible across the teams. Our aim is to let every QA engineer be a trainee at least once. To achieve this, for every new sprint, every 2 weeks, we endeavor to have a trainee. It's not always possible, of course, due to workload, but we try to do it. And in our company, internal mentorship is an opportunity that is given to everybody, regardless of their current level and skill set. The task that they get will depend on their current knowledge, but everybody can participate. So internal mentorship and working with the test automation team is a great chance to learn from the experts, and trainees, in our case, completely plunge into test automation activities. It's an opportunity not just to learn the techniques, but also to develop a mindset of research and innovation in the test automation world. It allows seeing from inside what's the test automation team do, learn from them, and afterwards share the gained knowledge with the rest of the team. As QAs, we're also moving towards being more independent and capable of doing more complex things. At the same time, I understand that it may not always be possible to organize the internal mentorship for QA engineers. Because especially if you work in a smaller team or limited in time, or you don't have dedicated test automation engineers. So what to do in this case? This is for sure a topic for a separate talk, because we need to take multiple factors into account, like your project and product specifics, your previous experience, tools that are available, language that you are using. But here is just some of the ideas which you could consider trying. I'll share the slides later, and these active links, you'll be able to follow them. So if you feel lack of confidence in basics of computer science, you can have a look at the free online course by Harvard University. If you want to improve design of your auto tests, you can have a look at XUnit test patterns book. It's pretty handy. Also, our tests are on Ruby, so some of the Ruby references and Ruby books are useful. Same as for testing communities. They can be good if you're looking for some advice or mentors. Finally, don't hesitate to ask online. It's hard to underestimate the usefulness of Stack Overflow. And it's of course not the full list, and you may find other sources of information and sources for inspiration. What I wanted to highlight is internal mentorship is of course a cool initiative, and personally I would definitely recommend it. But what's more important is your willingness to learn and grow as an engineer. As long as you're determined to do it, I'm sure you'll find the appropriate approach. And some more useful links, again, I'll share a slide later. Thanks for joining, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
All right, thank you a lot for your presentation and for closing up the night of our talks. So before we go over to the questions that are already there for you, I have actually two questions from myself to you, if you allow me. So what are your tips for team communication in these times? Because you mentioned a couple of times that sitting together and communication between teams is very important for you guys. So that's one. And the second one, do you see a trend, or do you recruit QA people also from other parts of the company who, for example, worked with the system before, for example, customer care, who then move over to QA because they look for a job in the tech?
Okay, so I'll start with the first question. Yes, indeed, now the communication changed. I know a couple of initiatives that we have inside the company. The first one was actually trialed by test automation team. I haven't tried it by myself. I'm not quite sure if I like it, but what they've done is everybody joined in the morning to a call, then muted themselves and switched off the camera. But at any point, any person can ask the question directly. And every team member is on the call and they can respond. They've tried it. I'm not quite sure was everybody happy with it or not. So apart from that, what we try to do is basically not to overuse the Slack or other messengers. We try to have a call. So it's easy to have a quick call rather than trying to explain your point in the chat. Luckily, it's super easy right now. Again, Slack has calls. You can even draw during a call. So during a mentorship, the people just agree on, let's say, like we can have a quick call in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, if you want to, and just limit it in time in order not to spend the whole day talking. And also just to plan these calls, maybe using the calendar, but it's probably that's the most valuable piece of advice. Don't try to write everything. It's much faster just to talk over the phone or over the Zoom call. And the second question was about the intra-company transfers. And so basically, if people from other departments move to QA, I know the cases when people move between departments, but from what I remember, they were mainly QA people who wanted to try something different, either BI, business analytics, or project management. So it's totally possible. I haven't heard of any problems with that. Again, it depends on the wish of the person. We have many resources that are available, internal resources that are available. Again, maybe now it's a bit more complicated because, well, when you see like even the environment setup may be tricky for you, it's a bit more complicated now to set everything up than in the office, but it's totally possible. We have the cases. Well, I'm not quite sure that these people are on the call right now, but if they are, then just raise the hand. Yeah, you'll explain. So I can recall. I even recall people who were actually leaving the company and then rejoining again to a QA department. Yeah, so it's totally possible.
Thank you a lot. So there are two questions for you. Yeah, great pictures and GIFs. But what tools and languages do you use for automated testing for iOS and Android apps?
Yeah. I didn't want to put the technical details here because we're limiting time. So briefly, we use Ruby as a language for. So now I'm speaking about end-to-end tests that are done by testers, test automation engineers or QA engineers. I'm not speaking about development side. So it's Ruby. We're using Calabash. For iOS, we have iOS device server that is actually managing all actions on the device or on simulator. For Android, we use Atom. That's in brief. We have, well, if you're interested, probably we can share the links later. We have it, and we have some of the tools open sourced as well. I just didn't really want to put everything here because it's a bit different topic. Why Calabash, if it's the next question? Because at the time when test automation started, I think it was 2013 or 2015. I haven't joined the company back then. It was the best tool, and it still caters for our needs. So basically, it does what we need. So there are no plans to switch to other tools right now. Probably it was the next question. Yeah, generally, that's what people ask.
Thank you. So, and then I have one question, which is, I think, for you, but I want to ask also Renat and Ivan. So what is the size of your QA team?
I failed to answer this question before the meeting started, right? I will fail right now as well. Well, I would say 50-70 maybe people. Well, it's hard to say, but at about that. So dozens of people for sure. But it's
So
not only about mobile. So it's about server side. It's about billing side as well. So it's about many teams. Yeah.
Renat, in Mews?
Well, we're a smaller company, so we have 6, is about to be 7. But hey, if you're asking, we're hiring. So I know Jan is going to hate me for saying this, but I did.
Yes, we have about 6 people, but there can be more. And Ivan, how about in Wrike?
I think about 15 or 70.
70.
Yeah, 70.
Yeah, that's a big army of QA engineers. Right, thank you very much, Ulad, once again. And I have 2 more questions for Timmy, if you still feel like answering, and if you're still on the call. For what types of functionalities do you use AA the most often?
The most often is definitely for the UI tests, although you can use them for other tests, such as like integration tests, end-to-end tests, UI tests. But most often we do use the AAA pattern for unit tests.
And I think this is something similar to AA should be perfect in combination with page object pattern. Am I right?
I think I can take this. Yes, it is. I'm sorry, there's like huge disturbances from someone.
Yeah,
it's better
you
now.
can talk.
So yes, we can use it in a default way. Like we never name it because it's more or less became a standard how to do it. So we do use it internally, and it is like by default like this. There's no other option. So maybe that's why like Timmy didn't really react to it as a name, because we kind of like fall back as a default way of writing. But yeah, you are absolutely correct. It's perfect together.
Right. Thank you, Renat. Thank you, Timothy. Thank you, Ivan, and thank you, Ulad. Thank you all the panelists, and thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you missed anything, okay, thank you for having the beer, at least somebody on the call. And I should get one too. So have a good evening and hopefully speak to you soon. Bye.